All right, with that, Sam Brock joins us now in studio. Sam, it is good to see you. You mentioned that $11 billion settlement with Caroline Ellison. Where did that come from?
That appears to be the $11 billion punishment. They're a reflection of the depth of the defrauding, Tom. Here's what's really interesting. You can't just declare bankruptcy and have that get erased. So basically, for the rest of her life, and the same thing for Sam Bankman-Fried as well, they are financially incapacitated, basically, by this judgment, which is to say that they can't accumulate their own wealth or really court investment without having to pay back the government.
Chapter 1. The Fall of a Prodigy. Imagine being smart enough to win math competitions, land a coveted Wall Street trading job, and co-run a multi-billion-dollar crypto empire, only to end up crying in a courtroom admitting you helped steal $8 billion. The arc of Caroline Ellison's life runs from prodigy to co-CEO to convicted felon, and then to star witness who helped bring her own boss and ex-boyfriend down. Caroline helped move more than $8 billion of customer money in one of the biggest financial frauds of this century, yet she will leave prison far earlier than many smaller-time criminals. Her journey runs from gifted Wall Street-style trader steeped in math and effective altruism to a conflicted insider who cried on the stand while describing how she lied for Sam Bankman-Fried. That contrast between her intellectual gifts and the moral collapse they were attached to creates one of the most jarring character arcs in recent financial history and instantly hooks anyone hearing her story for the first time. Chapter 2. Math Prodigy to Quant Trader. Caroline grew up as the classic math prodigy archetype: elite schools, competitive problem-solving, and an identity built around being the smart one. From a young age, she viewed the world through puzzles, probabilities, and optimization problems, the same mindset that would later fuel her work in trading. Academic success was not just an outcome, it was the core of how she understood herself and how others saw her. That fast track led her to Jane Street, a prestigious Wall Street trading firm known for its intense, hyper-rational culture and aggressive but tightly controlled risk-taking. At Jane Street, trades were not just bets, they were carefully modeled decisions, executed inside a system with guardrails, checks, and layers of oversight. It was there that she met a slightly older colleague, Sam Bankman-Fried, whose mix of quant smarts, utilitarian philosophy, and outsized ambition would reshape the rest of her life. Chapter 3. Following Sam into crypto. When Sam left Jane Street to start Alameda Research, Caroline followed him into the much wilder world of crypto arbitrage and high-speed trading. Alameda began by exploiting price gaps between exchanges and regions. Buy low on one platform, sell high on another, and do it fast enough and often enough to print money. In those early days, the narrative could still be told as clever outsiders using speed and math to harvest inefficiencies from a young, chaotic market. But the culture they built was nothing like the disciplined environment of Jane Street. Instead of rigorous controls and formal risk frameworks, Alameda relied heavily on improvisation, trust, and loyalty to the founder. Informal chats replaced structured committees. Gut instinct and urgency often trumped documented process. In that loose environment, belief in Sam's vision and the promise that all this risk was in service of some future greater good mattered more than traditional risk management. That mindset became the soil in which much larger, more dangerous decisions would later grow. Chapter 4. Love, Loyalty, and Normalized Fraud. Their professional relationship did not exist in a vacuum. It was intertwined with an on-and-off romantic one. That entanglement turned what might have been a straightforward boss-employee dynamic into something messier, where emotional dependency blurred lines of judgment. Caroline later described feeling that her personal and professional worlds both orbited around Sam, making it hard to separate disagreement from betrayal. He could be distant one moment and intensely involved the next, and she often found herself deferring to his judgment even when her instincts screamed that his instructions were reckless or wrong. This emotional imbalance made it easier for fraud to become normalized. Once she accepted that Sam knows best, bending rules could be reframed as temporary sacrifices in service of survival or long-term impact. Lying to lenders became smoothing over the narrative. Hiding risk became protecting the mission. Bit by bit, those rationalizations chipped away at any clear moral boundary. Chapter 5. Turning customer money into a lifeline. By 2021 to 2022, Alameda was taking huge risks and suffering heavy losses, even as the public image remained one of a dominant, unstoppable trading shop. Marketing, media coverage, and social media painted a picture of brilliance and control, while internal spreadsheets were increasingly filled with red ink and desperate calculations. Margin calls, illiquid venture positions, and volatile token bets all piled up in the background. The turning point came when FTX customer deposits, supposed to be segregated and protected, began to be used as a lifeline. As co-CEO, Caroline agreed to and helped coordinate borrowing billions in customer funds through special privileges hidden in FTX's systems. Alameda could run massive negative balances and avoid liquidation in ways no regular user ever could. She also helped draft and approve balance sheets that downplayed or obscured the true scale of Alameda's borrowing and risk. Numbers were moved into benign-sounding categories, exposures were framed more softly, and the terrifying reality was buried under neat formatting. Chapter 6. An $8 billion hole. The core fraud was brutally simple. Customers believed their deposits on FTX were safe, available for withdrawal at any time. Behind the scenes, a huge portion of those funds had already been funneled into Alameda to cover bad trades, repay loans, make new speculative bets, and fund a lifestyle of luxury real estate, sponsorships, and political donations. One pool of money was being silently promised to multiple groups at once. When crypto markets crashed and a wave of withdrawals hit FTX in November 2022, the illusion shattered. The money to honor those withdrawals simply wasn't there. Illiquid venture bets and depreciating tokens could not be turned back into cash fast enough, and some funds were gone for good. The resulting hole, around $8 billion in missing customer funds, instantly catapulted FTX into the pantheon of historic frauds. Chapter 7. The Flip. As the empire crumbled, Caroline made a choice that Sam did not. She flipped quickly. Within days of the public collapse, she sat down with federal prosecutors and regulators, admitted the core of what had happened, and agreed to cooperate. She walked them through the internal logic of the scheme, how the special code worked, who knew about the borrowing, how the misleading balance sheets were created, and where the money went. Her speed mattered. Early detailed cooperation gave investigators a roadmap they badly needed in a maze of shell companies, offshore entities, and half-documented decisions. It allowed them to move aggressively against Sam and other key figures before competing narratives could harden and before evidence could be lost. Chapter 8. From Architect to Star Witness. Caroline pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy, charges that, at their maximum, could have kept her in prison for decades. Instead of fighting in public, she chose a path of quiet cooperation. Long debriefings, meticulous document reviews, and preparation for the high-pressure moment of testifying at Sam's trial. Her lawyers effectively gambled that complete transparency and contrition would do more to save her future than any attempt to minimize her role. When she finally took the stand, the world saw a very different figure than the abstract caricature that had dominated online discussion. She appeared nervous, subdued, and visibly burdened by guilt. Her testimony connected dense technical evidence, code, margin systems, internal accounts, to human decisions made in small rooms and group chats. She named names, explained motives, and described how objections were raised, shot down, or simply ignored. Chapter 9. Inside the courtroom. In court, Caroline admitted to lying to lenders, signing false financial statements, and approving deceptive communications. She did not claim ignorance. Instead, she painted a picture of someone who understood enough to know it was wrong, but felt trapped by loyalty, fear, and a belief that confessing earlier would trigger catastrophic collapse. That tension between knowledge and paralysis came through in her voice and demeanor. One of the most striking parts of her testimony was her description of being instructed to use FTX customer funds to support Alameda's operations and investments, and her internal struggle over that decision. She spoke about nights of anxiety, about trying to convince herself this was temporary, and about the strange sense of relief when everything finally fell apart. Chapter 10. Sam's 25 years versus Caroline's 2. The jury ultimately convicted Sam Bankman-Fried on all major counts, accepting the narrative that this was not just reckless management, but deliberate fraud. He was later sentenced to 25 years in federal prison and hit with a massive forfeiture judgment representing tens of billions tied to the scheme. For many, his sentence became a symbolic line in the sand, a warning to future visionary founders that charisma and innovation do not excuse stealing from customers. Caroline's own sentencing looked radically different. She received 24 months in prison, followed by supervised release and an $11 billion forfeiture order that is more symbolic than realistic. The judge emphasized that her crimes were part of what might be the largest financial fraud ever seen in the United States, but also highlighted her unusually extensive cooperation and the central role it played in securing Sam's conviction. Chapter 11: Gender, Power, and Optics. That disparity in sentencing cannot be separated from broader questions about gender and power. Some observers see her case as a textbook example of how the justice system rewards insiders who come forward early, regardless of gender. Others argue that her youth, demeanor, and status as a woman at the center of a male-dominated scandal shaped how judges, jurors, and the public interpreted her actions and her remorse. Caroline did not emerge from FTX as a billionaire with mansions and global fame. Most of the extreme wealth, political influence, and celebrity flowed through Sam and other male executives. Chapter 12: Pawn, Player, or something in between. Her role sits in an uneasy space. On paper, Caroline was a high-ranking executive, co-leading a powerful trading firm and signing key documents that kept lenders and investors in the dark. She had authority, access, and the technical knowledge to understand the scale of what was happening. In that sense, calling her merely a victim or pawn erases the very real choices she made and the people harmed by them. At the same time, she operated under the gravitational pull of a domineering founder who controlled not only the companies, but also much of the narrative and, by her account, her emotional world. That makes it too simple to paint her as a cartoon villain. The truth is messier. She was both agent and instrument, beneficiary and subordinate. That ambiguity between responsibility and manipulation is exactly why her story refuses to settle into a single moral label. Chapter 13: What her story reveals about crypto. Caroline's journey also reveals uncomfortable truths about the culture of crypto and high finance more broadly. This was an industry that promised democratized money and radical transparency. Yet at its core, some of the most important decisions were made by a tiny circle of insiders in opaque ways. Special privileges, hidden leverage, and complex legal structures masked a very old pattern. A few people taking massive risks with other people's money and assuming it would all work out. She personally gained status, income, and a rare position of power as a young woman in a male-dominated space. But she did not walk away with the kind of life-changing wealth that might have seemed to justify the risk, at least in a cynical cost-benefit sense. When the fraud surfaced, she paid a heavy price in reputation and legal exposure, while some early investors and counterparties still walked away with fortunes made during the boom. Chapter 14: A cautionary tale for an industry. In the wider landscape of corporate fraud, the FTX Alameda saga now sits alongside Enron, WorldCom, and other giant implosions as a cautionary tale about opaque engineering and weak oversight. It shows how language like effective altruism, innovation, and disruption can become a moral fog that hides simple truths. Money was taken from where it should have been safe and used where it should never have gone. The spreadsheets, backdoor code, and offshore entities were just the mechanics. The real engine was human psychology, ego, loyalty, fear, and rationalization. Her decision to cooperate shows another recurring pattern. Once law enforcement appears with hard evidence and real consequences, tight-knit inner circles fracture fast. Chapter 15: Your Turn. Caroline Ellison's story is not just about one woman, one exchange, or one failed billionaire. It is about how quickly ethical lines can blur when ambition, ideology, and intimacy collide behind closed doors. The tools, spreadsheets, bespoke code, exotic financial products were advanced, but the underlying behavior was ancient. Trust misplaced, power unchecked, and a willingness to justify nearly anything in the name of a supposed greater good. If it happened at FTX, it can happen anywhere those same ingredients come together. So here is the question that lingers. Is Caroline Ellison a calculating criminal who got off easy, a manipulated accomplice caught in the orbit of a more powerful man, or a mirror held up to an entire industry built on blurred ethics and hero worship of genius founders? Comment below with your take. Your perspective might become the starting point for a future episode, so share this video with someone who still believes big names equal safety. They need to see just how thin that line can be.